Okay, so we've got some new SSDs, we've got 2nd gen Ryzen processor updates, and we've also got some information on the NVIDIA Geforce Partner Program. Lots of things to look forward to. So let's get going. Hi, I'm Sabri.
And I'm Kushant.
And you're watching The Bottom Line, which is our weekly update on all things tech, and we've got some really interesting topics for you. We're going to start off with Samsung's new NVMe SSDs. So if you know anything about NVMe, you know that Samsung has been pretty much top dog, alpha player in the field for a good few years running now. Started off with their 950 Pro SSDs.
NVMe is not too old.
Yeah, exactly. But as long as we can
the
remember,
technology came in, they've been like,
it's been the best.
Like it's been awesome.
It's been the best. And the last generation, which was Samsung 960 EVO and 960 Pro SSDs, have been Redline's go-to SSDs ever since they came out. And globally, they have been in every benchmark that we've seen so far, leading the pack in endurance, in speed, and they have, truth be told, for anyone needing that level of speed, which is about 5 to 6 times faster than even the best SATA SSDs.
This hit like
3,000 megabytes per second with crazy I/O levels above 200-300,000 IOPS per second. Or IOPS, I think, is per second.
IOPS
My bad.
It
is a second.
But
Outputs
per second.
So they have been amazing SSDs. Any one of you who own one can attest to this. We've had the pleasure of working with them, put them into a bunch of workstations. They're amazing. So they've finally updated it after a fairly long life cycle. I think it's been about a good year, which in SSD terms is a fairly long time. So they've replaced it with the creatively named Samsung 960 or rather 970 EVO and the Pro. Few small changes though, because they did such a great job with the EVO and the Pro last time with the 960 series. It was a huge jump over the 950 Pro. The sustained writes were better. There was no thermal throttling. The drives were just better. And so they couldn't really go much from there because it was such a good product. This generation is more of a, some of us don't know how to set their cell phones to silent. That's cool. It's alright.
My bad.
Okay, so essentially the improvements were a little more incremental this generation. So we've got slightly faster read speeds. I think the last generation was, the EVOs were reading at about 3.2 and I think the Pros were reading at about 3.5. I think those were the numbers.
They were very fast.
They were fast, blindingly fast. I believe this generation, the EVO writes very close to the last generation's Pro, so it's about 3.5, and I think the Pro writes closer towards 3.7, correct me if I'm wrong, it's around that. IOPS are ridiculous this time around, it's something close to 500,000 IOPS, which is mind-blowing, mind-boggling. Just to put this into perspective, ever since SSDs came out, which is about 10 years ago when they hit the mainstream, and ever since then, a flagship SATA SSD was an SSD that would hit about 100,000 IOPS. And those were on the most expensive, still is on the most expensive fastest SATA SSD.
is still a fast SSD.
And these, at only something like 30% of a price premium over a regular SATA SSD, provides you 500,000 IOPS, which is mind-boggling. 99% of you are not going to even need that, but it does it, which is cool.
Yes.
The biggest plus side, in my opinion, is the fact that they actually bumped up the warranty for the 960 EVO from 3 to 5 years. Not on the 960, on the 970. And I believe the Pro is now 10 years, which is saying a lot towards Samsung's own consideration of how reliable these SSDs are. And now they are more in line with their SATA 860 and 860 Pro. So that's always good. So what's next on our list?
Last week, we spoke about the whole memory shortage on how graphics cards, GDDR5 memories, there's a shortage, the prices are going up, all of that. So apparently, this was done intentional. So there is news.
Is it confirmed to be intentional or is it's an accusation?
It's an accusation and there's a class action lawsuit being filed against Samsung, Hynix and Micron. These are the three biggest suppliers for memory products.
You may not have known. So all the RAM of all the famous brands that you've probably heard of, the chips that go on them are made by these three. Micron is the world's largest, or is Samsung the world's largest now? It's either Samsung or Micron. The two are
and
huge.
Hynix are third place. Three of them together control over 90% of the market. So what this lawsuit is addressing is that they have apparently increased prices and created an artificial shortage.
Yes.
So
it's called collusion. I believe that's the term.
Yes, that is the term.
It's called collusion. So essentially what the law the law is in place to prevent people who monopolize a certain market, or it's sometimes if it's more than one player, but just two players, like for a perfect example, like processors, Intel and AMD, to prevent two players from colluding, and which essentially means talking to each other and deciding on a certain price to keep their prices high, so they can both make higher margins and neither of them drop their margins. So what that does is the consumer gets screwed over in the end, and
so
they make
essentially
money.
the proof that they are using is even though there was a shortage and people, like, their excuse for the price increase was that production costs have gone up and blah blah blah. But over the last year, they've registered over double profits. So
On the same amount of sales.
Yes.
So I
They
don't
made
know
a
about
lot more money.
They made a lot more money. So in all fairness,
So unfortunately for us as consumers, this might not lead to price reductions. So how usually class action lawsuits work is if the lawsuit goes through, anyone who had purchased RAM, this is in the US though, so we probably
probably
won't be
won't get
affected.
kicked. Don't expect any rebates from us. Is not going to happen.
Anyone who purchased RAM at higher prices will get rebates from whatever fines that these guys pay.
Yeah, assuming that they win. So right now there is no proof per se. It's an accusation used from inside information, so it could be true. Does sound about right, because I remember these prices went up, I think, what was it, early 2017? Or was it earlier than that?
I think, yeah, early 2017.
17, and they've pretty much been on the rise or maintained ever since then. So it's been over a year. So you'd think huge companies would be able to get their production processes together and drop prices back again. But it's been a year and we don't see any sign of change.
I'm pretty sure like something went wrong somewhere, and yes, the prices did go up, and then once like the production cost dropped and supply normalized, we can still make money.
It hasn't really been affecting our sales. We could probably get away with this. So
I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
It probably happened.
So they might not have been like doing this all throughout, but maybe for like at least a quarter or two.
Our money would definitely be that they did it. So
Yeah.
hopefully this will. But regardless, I feel like industry insiders have told us that 2019 prices are expected to come back down. Still a ridiculously long wait though. I feel like
prices have started dropping ever so
but
slightly.
we are talking very minor, like few percentage points. So you're gonna at most see prices drop in Sri Lanka by about maybe 500 rupees, 1,000 rupees, which is still horrible considering we're a good, like what, on an 8GB stick we're a good 8,000 to 9,000 rupees off where it should be in our opinion. So hopefully something good will come of this. Next on our list, this is the coolest news I think I've heard all week, is the fact that we've got second gen Ryzen processors in addition to the ones that you've already seen coming out. So I'm not talking about the 2700X, I'm not talking about the 2600, we're talking about Ryzen 3 and Ryzen 5 second gen refreshes. We're not talking again about the 2400 or the 2200G with the onboard graphics. Replacements for last generations 1200, 1300X and the 1500X, which are I think going to be named the 2500X, 2300X and the 2100. I don't know.
Probably.
These are again rumors, I think.
Again, rumors. Yes.
Rumors, so nothing confirmed from AMD yet, but it'll be very cool if this comes for two main reasons. One is the fact that the new second gen high-end processors have been amazing. On paper as well as in real life, the performance has been absolutely staggering for the price. The X processors are now all getting cooler.
We have an unboxing.
We have an unboxing video which we'll link down below, check it out. And the best thing about it is that the APUs with their onboard graphics came out at pretty much the same price point as the Ryzen 3, Ryzen 5s of last gen, which means these will definitely be cheaper, or if they're the same price, they'll be clocked higher. Both things which are great. They may even clock higher than 4.5 because they have a lower number of cores. We don't know. But overall, you're going to get a lower TDP, faster clocks, maybe lower price, which is like in all three things that matter.
All the second generation processors have been cheaper than their first gen counterparts.
True. So something to get excited if you're holding out for a second gen Ryzen and the APUs weren't quite what you were looking for, you might be getting great processors coming up. A lot of announcements coming up closer towards Computex 2018, which is around June, I believe.
Yeah, it's in about a month.
So that's,
At that point, we'll have like a ton of news to talk about.
There's going to be some crazy stuff happening. We might have some live feeds coming from Computex via somebody. So we'll see. But definitely we are going to have a podcast around that time, and you're going to hear some crazy shit. I don't know if I can say that, but
It's
I
okay,
said
that's why bleeps exist.
Okay. So what's next on our list, Kushal?
Alright. Keeping up with the same processor, we have this on our phones. So if you're wondering why we're looking down,
we haven't memorized. We're not that pro yet.
The designer for Ryzen processors, that's Jim Keller. He was the main chief architect for Ryzen processors. He joined Intel.
It's pretty interesting.
Yes, so Intel have been, these are published news, so Intel have been having some problems with their new generation, these are called processing, manufacturing process?
Manufacturing nodes.
Manufacturing nodes, yes.
We could be wrong, we sometimes don't know what we're talking about. But I think it's called manufacturing nodes.
Process, that's manufacturing process. So Intel's current processors are on a 14 nanometer manufacturing process. So what you should know is the smaller the manufacturing process, the less the power draw and more performance you can cram into processor. So Intel has been stuck at 14 nanometers for the past 3 years, and their next step up was to drop down to 10 nanometers. So over the last couple of years they've been having issues. Every time they've tried a new processor generation, they've tried going to 10 nanometer and they've been stuck for some reason, right? So the current news is that they are not expecting the 10 nanometer to come out until at least 2019.
Yeah, so that's crazy considering that, okay, this is how you put things in perspective. So from what we gather, they tried to make the process change from a 14 nanometer down to 10 nanometer back in the 6th gen, is it?
2016.
6th generation. So essentially Intel, who are the world's largest processor manufacturer by far, whose R&D budget alone is larger than AMD's entire revenue,
yes.
Right? So yeah, literally all of AMD, including the GPU division, that's just Intel's R&D division. So all of that together, they were unable to shrink from 14 to 10 when we already have phones on 10mm.
Here's the interesting part of it. Ryzen first gen was 14, Ryzen second gen is 12.
Yep.
So AMD managed to drop down a lot, and they've already promised by the end of 2018 they'll have 7 nanometer processors on them.
So Global Foundries is essentially the company that manufactures processors for AMD right now. And Global Foundries are the ones who put out the statement saying that they are looking to switch over to 7 nanometer. Nonetheless, still impressive.
Yes. So
crazy impressive.
The switch, Jim Keller's switch, is rumored to be to solve the issues with switching to 10 nanometer. Because
Intel
is scared.
Intel's obviously kind of going, you know what, this is what I feel like happened, right? Like last year, I feel Intel was sitting comfortable, you know, they're like...
They had no competition.
They had no competition from AMD.
Last year they had no competition.
Almost 8 years of just, you know, putting out processors at whatever prices they wanted. And AMD comes from absolutely nowhere with their little glued together silicon, and they give you these crazy, almost like twice the number of cores at the same price. And definitely shook up Intel a bit. Like we were thinking, okay, Intel probably have like, you know, some black projects, you know, in the back. That are, you know, like classified that they just pull out and they'll have like a better processor than AMD, but it didn't happen. We're still waiting. It didn't happen. They put out Cannon Lake, which is the Intel 8 Gen, which is very, actually when you think about it, great performance, clocked amazingly. How long had Intel been holding out on us if we could have always hit 5, dude, like this is the funniest thing to me, right? Like AMD put out an 8-core processor and literally within 6 months, all of a sudden Intel processors are hitting 5 GHz.
Yes.
Like, and not even on 4 cores, they're hitting
6 cores.
On 6 cores, they're hitting. So I'm thinking, sitting here going, wait, Intel could do this all this time, and then all of a sudden, you know, like.
Yeah, they were sitting around doing nothing. Like, we did a very interesting video, right? It's up, I think, yesterday, where compared the 3rd gen processor to 8th gen processor for gaming performance. No real difference.
No real difference. And true, that may not be completely Intel's fault, it could be game developers. But at the same time, if Intel had put high number of cores, game developers would have obviously made use of it in the last 5 years. So kudos to AMD. We're not AMD fan. Well, Kushan's an AMD fan. We're not necessarily
I'm a fan of performance.
Okay, so also an AMD fan. So I'm not saying we're AMD fanboys, but we love it. We love what AMD is doing right now. Like they're really bucking the trend. They're really showing up in
shaking things up, making things move forward.
Yes, pretty much. I'm thinking like Intel were probably thinking, okay, we're still on 14 nanometer, and they weren't really in a rush. 6th gen came, 7th gen came, and they were like, you know, it's okay, we don't really. And then suddenly AMD drops Ryzen, and Intel like, crap, now we need to put out like the 10 nanometer. And apparently they'd been trying for 2018 to get it to work, but because I think they hadn't put in enough R&D and effort into making it work, they just couldn't get their silicon to shrink down to 10 nanometer, and delayed again, and this is bad for Intel because mainly Intel promised this to their shareholders as well as customers about 2 to 3 years ago. They're still not delivering. AMD has already announced through Global Foundries that they're shrinking to 7 nanometer. When 7 nanometer comes, you're probably going to see Ryzen chips and Ryzen 3 is probably going to be based on this 7 nanometer chip. So you're probably going to see Ryzen chips hitting 5 gigahertz. You're going to see crazy low TDPs. You're going to see like maybe more cores than 8 even in the mainstream. We don't know what's going to happen. And Intel are nowhere close. So right now they are probably crapping them. I feel like they got caught with their pants down and they're like, it's okay, we have 10 nanometer and then 10 nanometer was plugged in. It stopped working. Oh God, we have no 10 nanometer. What are we going to do? So I find it hilarious that Intel did this. But
who did this? Go bring him.
Go bring him. Bring me his head. But there is a rumor that Intel, like we brought this up last week, that Intel are going to release an 8-core this year, which we have spoken to some industry insiders, we've spoken to some country managers who we can't name, and it's pretty much confirmed that Intel are going to be putting out an 8-core, and Intel are also going to be putting out an Z390 chipset to go with it. So it's practically confirmed. We don't know if it's backward compatible, but Intel are putting out an 8-core this year. So if any of you were thinking about jumping on their 6-core bandwagon, or some of you who, despite common logic, were trying to go for the 7820X 8-core, I would advise you to hold off. We might have.
It might be soon. I'm thinking Computex.
Computex they might announce it because they need that. Because right now the second gen processors, and I'm not just saying this. Like we've done a lot of benchmarks, we've built a few PCs, there are a lot of reviews online. Right now, Ryzen is the second gen is wiping the floor with Intel when it comes to productivity tasks. Like when I say wiping the floor, true, it might be a bit of an exaggeration. The 8th gen processors are still viable. They're good.
The differences are like so minimal. Like a 10% increase is wiping the floor.
Yes. So right now the 2700X in pretty much all 3D video editing, you name it, post-production tasks is winning across the board. And add to that the fact that it's cheaper than 8700K. Add to that it already has a fantastic cooler that comes for the price. The 8700K, remember, keep in mind, doesn't come with the cooler. So you get a decent cooler, even costs you another $50, and in rupees that's like at least 5,000 and above. A good cooler that can actually cool it. Overclock is above 10,000 easy. So right now the Ryzen comes with an amazing RGB capable red prism cooler with a huge heatsink. You can OC on it. Crazy value, and at the same time is outperforming the 8700K. So great time to be buying a Ryzen build or a workstation. Fantastic time, and hopefully Intel will come up with something cool.
Hopefully,
let's hope. Right. So up next,
they are coming up with something cool. They've also started working on a graphics card.
Oh yes,
this came out. Well, it didn't come out of nowhere. Also, Intel also hired the head of Redline Technologies groups from AMD.
I feel like this is just Intel. It's like AMD is doing these things, throw money at the problem, just hire the head.
AMD is doing this. Who is responsible? Bring him.
Hire him, get him.
You do this for us. So yes, I think this was a few months ago. The head of, I think last January, the head of Redline Technologies groups joined Intel. So they are working on a new graphics card. Don't have a lot of details. We are expecting working silicon to be available for testing sometime early next year.
Yeah, actually,
it's quite soon.
That is quite soon. Now, if any of you were very, very into tech, you guys might have heard there was this project called Project Larrabee. 2000, a long time ago. And what happened was Intel were trying to build their own discrete graphics card. It was no secret. They made it very public. And despite their best efforts, they just couldn't get their GPUs to perform as well as NVIDIA and Radeon at the time. And they eventually scrapped the project. But that project was salvaged and essentially turned into their Xeon Phi. PHI, a line of multi-core processors that had up to 40 to 60 cores on one processor, and so that was a spin-off of that project. But it looks like with this head,
some of you might be thinking like Intel already has processors like the onboard graphics.
That's true, they do.
This is different. Like they are looking to compete in high-end space. So
with NVIDIA, with
AMD. So you are thinking like Intel graphics cards, like 1060, 1070, 1080 level graphics cards from Intel. So
as soon as 2019.
Like at least see like working prototypes.
That's pretty interesting because I feel like the graphics card market has stagnated, not for too long, but for better part of a year.
AMD is not too strong in the graphics card right now, so we could use another competitor there. Yeah. Speaking of competition, you might have heard of the Geforce partner program. So this is essentially NVIDIA demanding that. Not demanding, suggesting to their
demanding
pretty much to their well, on the table it's suggesting, but maybe under the table they were demanding, that there are board partners, so the likes of like ASUS and Gigabyte and MSI, have dedicated branding for NVIDIA graphics cards. So essentially, how it was supposed to work was like ASUS, like they have their Republic of Gamers graphics cards, so they would dedicate that to only NVIDIA graphics cards. So interestingly enough, we wanted to discuss this last week, but we ran out of time. There was a very interesting development since then.
Yeah, just in 1 week.
Just in 1 week. So there was this whole, I think a lot of us in the tech world.
A lot of backlash against
it. A lot of people speaking out saying like this actually hurts consumer choice, and like NVIDIA is forcing people, forcing brands actually to relegate their AMD graphics cards into secondary brands or newer brands that don't have enough mileage.
The reason why this would be a problem is, in a nutshell, is essentially that what NVIDIA wanted was, like, for example, the ROG brand for ASUS, they wanted that brand just for them. So that means what they wanted is, essentially, they didn't want ASUS selling any AMD graphics cards under the ROG brand. So they were like, if you're going to sell NVIDIA, you'd have to sell it only with ROG. So what ASUS had to go and do was they had to come with a completely new brand, which they did, called Aries. And they launched a completely new line of, like, you know, boxes and all of that stuff. Same cards though.
Same cards, so they started marketing it separately as Aries. They released new boxes, they shipped out new stuff. And
Gigabyte, I think, switched Aorus branding completely over to NVIDIA.
And they just released gaming graphics cards.
Yes. And
so
there were a bunch of other manufacturers.
After all of this was done, NVIDIA scrapped the program.
Yes. Well, they scrapped the program because I believe they were under a lot of pressure. Because obviously a lot of people were like, this is very unfair. Because what that means is essentially the reason why it seemed like NVIDIA was bullying their partners into this. Because what was said, NVIDIA still has the majority market share for graphics cards. Still more than 70% market share. So what that meant is NVIDIA was essentially saying, if you don't do this, you know, you may not get
graphics cards
new graphics cards
might not get game bundles,
exactly, and
might
that's,
not get support.
They didn't explicitly say that, but you know, it was kind of implied, and a lot of people in the tech industry, a huge backlash online, and fantastic. It actually worked. It actually worked. Exactly. So NVIDIA was such a bad person. They put out a PR statement.
They put out a PR statement saying that, look, this is what we wanted to do, which is
people. They were like, people misinterpreted it and took it the wrong way. Yeah, I'm sure.
I think they were stepping on like a few legal grey areas also.
Yeah, they were actually. There was a lawsuit against them.
There was no lawsuit, but I think a few people were questioning the legality of their terms and conditions, some partners. So they had to finally scrap the program, and they had like put out a big thing like, look, we tried to do this for you.
And they've scrapped it. So we don't know if it's completely dead, if they'll rename it to something else, but for now,
I'm pretty sure it will be there in like some form.
Maybe.
Not as the partner program, but I'm pretty sure like they will support people who already committed to giving them separate branding.
That's true, because you know that was a big deal. Like for ASUS to go out and put out a PR statement, completely rebrand all of their cards.
So that would have been a significant cost in
it would have. So I hope NVIDIA are going to do something like remunerate them. Poor guys.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm happy. I really wasn't for the program. I'm glad it happened. Other great news. Intel finally decides to retire their KABY X processors. Finally, I don't even know who at Intel thought this was a great idea. So a lot of you may not even know that on their X29 and high-end workstation motherboards, there were also two processors called the i5.
Three?
Was that i3?
i3 processor.
No, they never launched it.
Didn't they launch it?
No. It was a rumor. They wanted to launch it, and then someone was like, yo guys, it's already stupid, let's not get stupider. So there were two processors. There was an i5
7740, i5 7640X
and an i7 7740X. Essentially, these were 7th gen i5Ks and i7Ks, which were essentially taken and put onto the X29 socket. And without going into much detail, they heavily crippled a lot of the functions that made X299 great. And Intel's justification.
So they were essentially getting a.
It's a 270 processor
and features
and
with an X299 board.
Yeah, and it disabled a bunch of features on X299 board as well. And it was so confusing for the customer, it made no sense. We didn't sell a single one of those because we thought they were stupid, and they were, and we were right. And finally Intel, because Intel's justification was like, okay, if you couldn't afford a 7800X 6-core, maybe you could put an i5 for now and then upgrade to a 10-core or whatever later. Stupid logic. Like Intel should know better. Like they are the biggest processor manufacturer manufacturer in the world. Like they should know better. So finally, they would have looked at the sales and realized
Like
that no
no
one's
one's
really
buying
buying it, and they've now officially announced that they're going to retire. So that's good news. Intel, please, up your game a bit. You guys are better than this. Please. Alright, so that brings us to the end of the show. So please let us know if you liked it. We are going to keep these podcasts coming.
Hopefully every week.
We couldn't put one out last week because we were a little tight for time, but hopefully we'll have one coming out every week and hopefully on one particular set day. And if there are any improvements, please run them by us. We read your comments on the last podcast as well.
If there's anything that you specifically like us to talk about,
please mention it to us, and if you love it,
to talk about certain types of products or certain topics,
which are all yours. So if you love this video or if you like this video, please share this with your friends and get the word out. We have a link to this on our Soundcloud down as well if you just want to hear us talk and you don't necessarily want to see us. Yeah, so you're missing out on the visuals here. So at the same time, subscribe to our YouTube channel in case you haven't already. But please share. We want to get this information out. If you're a techie, if you're an enthusiast, stay tuned for our next channel or rather next video next week. That's pretty much it.
That's pretty much it. Yes.
Alright, see you guys next week then.